Welcome to this episode of YouTube entitled What's for Dinner, and that's what we're featuring here is some footage prior to and after a weekly feeding. So we have a program called What's for Dinner that's offered every Saturday night, and it's typically a large deer. We did also have a birthday webinar on Monday, April 27th, so we're not going to see wolves as hungry because they had a steer hind quarters, which was about 40 or 50 pounds of meat. Now, most of that was probably eaten by Luna and Aiden, so they're not going to be quite as hungry. But typically what happens in a pre-feeding is they are watching the wolf lab, they're watching the exhibit, as the front of the exhibit, as people come in for the public program and people are at the window, kind of picks up their interest, so you see everybody's ears are pricked forward. And then the wheelbarrow is brought in with the deer, and that is dumped in the front of the exhibit. And typically, all four of them do investigate the deer initially, wanting to see what's for dinner and sniff it out and check it out. And depending upon how hungry they are, they may engage in a tug of war or kind of a pulling behavior, like Denali's doing that right there. So Luna, like I said, had eaten a lot of that steer, as well as Aiden had probably eaten a lot of that steer as well on Monday, so they're not all that hungry. The other thing is that it's very warm. So for us, we're getting temperatures in the 70 degrees. These wolves have a full winter coat, and so they're not all that hungry, and it's as they say, too warm to eat sometimes. So the deer is thawed from the freezer. We freeze everything here for about 2 weeks to try to control any ticks or things, parasites, external parasites that may come in on the deer. And then we thaw it for a period of time, and we feed it partially frozen, because on a warm night it's nice to have a cooler chunk of meat to chew on. So it's thawed enough for them to chew in it, and you'll see them using their back carnassials to cut the meat. Their back molars will be used to break bone. Their incisors will be used to pull at sinew or muscle, like Bolts is doing there. Bolts is on the right, Denali's on the left. These two are very compatible. They do get along quite well. And Luna did join later on in the evening, but again, not as hungry. She had a belly full. So these wolves are feast and famine consumers. That means they can eat up to 20% of their body weight at one time. So she's probably carrying full belly easily since that Monday excess amount of deer. Amount of beef. So she's going to just kind of sleep by the carcass. So the next morning, this is some footage of Aiden feeding on the carcass, and you can see somebody's been eating on it all night. It's pulled apart. A lot of the meat is gone. He's chewing on some of the sinew or the muscle there. But one thing that you have to be aware of for a daytime feeding is that you have a lot of friends, and ravens are frequent visitors to this exhibit. We can have anywhere from 10 to 20, many as 40 ravens feeding on a deer carcass at one time. So Aiden's feeding, again, a little bit quieter on Sunday morning. We don't open until 10 o'clock, so he's just got staff there, so he feels a little less intimidated. May have fed through the night as well, but as he starts to feed here, you can see the ravens are posturing to try to get a little bit of food. Now, ravens and Aiden are not usually an issue. He doesn't seem to chase them as much. Maybe that's his personal trait, not as threatened by him as, say, Luna is, or Grizzer. Grizzer has been known to kill a few ravens in his enclosure. So Aiden just calmly feeds, is going to pull off a piece of hide, and that kind of a pull, tug-of-war is very common to be able to get some of that hide out. And they actually do consume that hide. That hair, as though, is non-digestible, and that'll just kind of sit in their bellies. And then when they defecate, you'll see scat that has that hide wrapped around really sharp bones and kind of protects the intestinal lining from any puncturing by that kind of method. So it's typical for wolves when they're feeding to maybe mark their cache or their food resource. And here Aiden just defecated there and then scraped the ground. Although the ravens aren't all that impressed by marking, it certainly doesn't keep them away from the carcass. So Aiden's going to do the next best thing to, if you can't mark it and get any respect from the scavengers, then you just take it into the den. And there's twofold benefit of going into the den. The den is about 10 or 15 degrees cooler. As the temperatures and the sun comes out, the temperatures warm up. It's a cooler place to feed, and the ravens were not going to come into the den to feed. So Luna, like I said, is probably fed sometime during the night as well, but not as hungry. She's a little more likely to pay attention to the ravens and to do a little bit of a chase. But like I said, without a lot of interest in food, there's not nearly as much guarding behavior going on with the ravens, and the ravens take it in stride. There's really not too many issues between the exhibit pack and the ravens. So over in Grizzer's World, Grizzer had a webinar. His birthday is actually May 5th on Tuesday. We had a webinar for him on a Friday night on May 1st because we had some extra staff and we were able to manage it a little bit better. You can hear the sound of running water. Grizzer's pond drain thawed on Friday right before the webinar, so we were actually able to quickly clean it and get some water in there for him. So as the temperatures get warm, we certainly want to give them a place to at least be able to wet themselves on and kind of crawl into, and so that's what we did. We didn't get a full algae scrubbing because it just drained, but we were able to put a little bit of water in there, and we're able to clean it when the next Working for Wolves is, which is May 15th. So we'll see you in a few weeks for Working for Wolves, and that's about it for this webinar. Thanks for watching.